Welcome to Uncovered. I'm Anthony Davis. He's Ron Filipkowski. It's Wednesday, which means we get the chance to spend an hour with you uncovering the MAGA propaganda that is not covered by the mainstream media. Ron, good afternoon, good evening. We're in different time zones, so we kind of, we're trying to handle that. It's not too much for my brain. Let's start with Donald Trump's legal situation. Of course, he's in a criminal trial. It's very different to a civil trial. And let's be clear about this. He has never really had to sit in a criminal trial like this before, where he has been required to be there every single day. He is not handling this very well as a criminal defendant, is he? The way that the judge is talking to him, even the environment, it's not a fancy place. Just kind of react to what you think he's thinking, having to attend every single weekday, bar Wednesdays.
I knew, because knowing Trump as well as I do, that was going to be the most difficult part of this whole enterprise, more so even than the charges or the punishment, whatever he's going to get. I think this is the part that's hardest for him, because he is used to, when he walks into a room, any place that he goes, he is the hero. He's the worship. He controls every aspect of the situation.
Yeah.
And you see that with Secret Service, where he's directing them. He's pointing at people that he wants away from him. He's pointing out people he wants to talk to. He controls every aspect of the situation. But in court, he can't. And he is also not used to having to sit there in one place all day. He never, ever does that. Donald Trump is constantly moving. He very rarely ever stays in one place for more than an hour. So I think it's very, very difficult for him to have to sit there at the table, number one. Number two, have no control over the environment. And number three, to be quiet, where he can't say anything. In fact, there was one time where they were pointing out that one of the prospective jurors was celebrating the 2020 election when Biden won, and had a video on social media about it. And Trump got very animated and upset, and the judge stopped the proceedings and told him to shut up. And so things like that are very hard on him. The other aspect of this is that how long this is going to take. I thought this was going to be like a 3 or 4 week trial.
Are you kidding me? 3 or 4 weeks just to find the jurors, right?
Right. The judge told the jurors that he expects it to be done at the end of May. So we're looking at 6 weeks minimum, 6 to 8 weeks, that he's got to do this every single day, except Wednesdays. So they've given Wednesday off for him to have a sort of a midweek break. But and he's getting up very early, which is unusual. He usually posts his first social media tweet at like 7:15 in the morning. Now he's doing them at 5:15, 6 o'clock, because he's got to be there at 9 o'clock sitting in a courtroom. And it takes him like 2 hours to do his hair and makeup and everything, to put everything together. So he's got to get up super early, or much earlier than he's used to.
He's really not happy about the way jury selection is going, is he? And he's
no.
complaining about it. He's posting on Truth Social, the stream of consciousness, total crazy town. Just tell us about this process. I think they've seated, 6 or 7 jurors already?
7.
Right.
Yeah, so they're going to pick 12 jurors, and they're going to have 6 alternates. And so there's a few things that he doesn't understand as far as like how jurors get excused. So there's 2 ways you can excuse jurors. There's for cause, which is unlimited number of people, and already probably over 100 people have been excused for cause. That's people who just raise their hand and say, look, I cannot be fair. Or one guy had a wedding in California he had to go to for his son. But the vast majority of people just raised their hands and said, I can't sit on this case. I can't be fair. Now, under normal circumstances, what a judge does is explore that. Why can't you be fair? Let the lawyers explore that. They're not even bothering to do that in this case. If you raise your hand and say, I can't be fair, you're gone. You don't even say another word. It's that easy to get off this jury, because look, if they didn't do that, this would take weeks. And so that's one way. And there's an unlimited number of people that can get kicked off for that reason. But then the part that Trump did not understand is you have what's called peremptory challenges, which is where you can excuse people for no reason. You just don't like the way they look. You don't like the way they're talking. and he only gets 10. Each side gets 10.
And that's a New York law, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
And
I mean,
his
some
his
Florida's
lawyers
6.
didn't know about that.
Right. Every state's a little different. Florida's 6, other states are 12. Depending on the seriousness of the charge, that number can go up or down. But New York, it's pretty standard. Felony cases is 10. So he thought he got an unlimited number of those too. Like he could just get rid of whoever he wanted. He didn't understand that, no, once you hit 10, here's the other problem. It's very strategic. It's like a chess game, because once you use that 10th preemptory strike, you can't, the next person who comes in might be worse than the people that you've struck before, and you're already out of strikes. So you can't burn those. You got to save them and only use them on the worst people. The other part that's aggravating him that he doesn't understand is he's not going to just get all Republican Trump voters. Just because somebody contributed to Joe Biden or voted for Joe Biden or is a Democrat is not a reason to excuse someone off the jury for cause. Same thing for the state. They can't get rid of all the Republicans. So that's just the way it goes. That you get a jury of your peers. That doesn't mean you get a jury that's the same political party as you.
But this does pose a problem, doesn't it? Because how are you going to find 12 people who haven't heard of Donald Trump, don't know what's going down in American politics right now, aren't aware of the threat to democracy, unless, of course, they're just watching Fox and Newsmax? So, and I appreciate that some people do exist in a bubble. In New York, that's pretty hard because it's a metropolis. And then I heard that one guy was dismissed because he'd posted or reposted a meme of some, anti-Trump thing from a while back. I mean, this is normal, isn't it?
Yes, but we've talked about this. The 7 jurors that have been seated, there's a common theme. And the common theme is what we've talked about in the show in the past, which is those low information swing voters that tend to decide elections who don't pay close attention to politics. Well, if you look at what these people have said who are on the jury, the pattern is this. They're not on social media, or if they are, they're like on Facebook to post pictures of their kids, but they're not on Twitter. They're not on Truth Social or any of these political social media sites. They don't watch MSNBC or Fox, or, they watch local news, or they watch sports. We heard a lot of that. And they're just not that into politics. They vote maybe, but they don't really pay that much attention. And this is the classic swing voter too. Yeah. So it's interesting that the people who are going to decide this case are also the same kinds of people that are going to decide this election.
It's very interesting. I was thinking about the fact that because Trump is such a force and so utterly repellent that, he's really not designed to fit into the legal system, because he just ignores it. And even the fact that he is so outrageous that it affects the public conversation, the national conversation, the public psyche. It's almost impossible to get 12 jurors on a case like this. I mean, I appreciate they will, and they'll keep going until they get them. But the fact that, this is how much this guy is contrary to the normal protocols of the judiciary and the judicial system, is that he has almost out-famous himself so that he doesn't fit. A bit like, will he ever go to prison? Well, what are you going to do with all of his Secret Service? Are they going to go to prison too? Do you see what I mean? That time and time again, Trump manages to kind of elevate himself, despite being the dumbest man in America, so that he can avoid all of these traditions.
The parallel is the biggest trial that Trump has ever been involved in his life with a jury was that when he was a USFL owner in the 1980s and they sued the NFL. Okay. And that is the parallel to look at for me, because what happened back then? Look, the NFL lawyers' strategy was they understood that this was being presented by the USFL as a David Goliath situation, where they were the upstart underdog league trying to compete against this big behemoth, the NFL, with all these billionaires, and they got crushed by the billionaires. So their strategy was the NFL's lawyers looked at the USFL owners, there was like 16 of them, and they said, who's the worst guy in here that we can demonize, it was Donald Trump. And their strategy was, if we can get this jury to hate Donald Trump, then they're not going to look at this as a David and Goliath. They're going to look at this as an ass, a jerk, an obnoxious jerk.
That guy.
That's caused all of this all these problems between the two leagues. And that's exactly what happened when they interviewed jurors years later after the trial was over. They all said the same thing, that their opinion about the case turned when Donald Trump testified, because they detested him so much and thought he was lying that it changed their mind about the case. And that is what I can see happening here. Again, his behavior in the courtroom, I don't think he's going to testify, but his lawyer's behavior in the courtroom is going to turn off these jurors and turn them against him.
Yeah, it's the power of the ego, the narcissism, this tunnel vision that makes him say and do really quite terrible things. I have a clip of him outside the courtroom. Of course, he can't speak in the courtroom, so he does the typical thing where in the morning he shows up, tries to speak to the camera, tries to, set the mood, claiming it's a witch hunt and all that normal stuff. And then afterwards, he tends to come out, and he even posted on Truth Social yesterday, "I stormed out of the court," which is just, he might have walked slightly quicker than usual because he couldn't wait to get home. But anyway, let me show the clip and we'll talk about what he's saying here.
Never been a judge so conflicted as this. It's ridiculous. And also, there's no crime. You know where the crime is? In the bodegas, where they come and rob them every week.
There's no crime.
Well, they made a big deal out of this last night, which was, Trump, I think, understands that there's probably more likely than not he's going to lose this trial. So what he is trying to do is make it use this trial as a political event. And he's doing that with the statements he makes when he goes into the courtroom, like you said. And I have begged media not to cover those statements that he makes because they're exactly the same every day. It's his playbook. He repeats the same 5 talking points, which are all lies, over and over and over again. They should not cover it. But then you're seeing what he's doing is he's staging events after court, like this one. Now, what this was supposed to be is a spontaneous, they made it like he spontaneously decided, leave court, and told his driver, let's go up to Harlem to the bodegas, and I'm going to talk about crime and how these bodegas keep getting robbed and they're not doing anything about it, right? So he acts like, so they go up there and he shows up, and there's this throng of maybe 50 people there, and they're cheering Donald Trump, and their campaign team put it out like, oh, look at this. All these people in Harlem love Donald Trump. He's a man of the people, is what Jason Miller tweeted, right? Then we find out today, Midas Touch does a little investigation. We find out this whole thing, just like the Chick-fil-A event, was staged. It was set up by the New York Young Republican Club. Gavin Wax is very close and very tight with Trump. He brought all his members out there. They were the ones that predominantly made up that throng of people. They were the ones leading the cheers for Trump. It was all a staged event. And the media must not cover these for those reasons, because these things are all fake, just like the fake Union rally, just like the Chick-fil-A. They're all a scam.
Trump's not used to going a whole day without his favorite food and drink to keep him awake, is he? You're not allowed to take food or drink into the courtroom. He's in there a long day. Apparently, he drinks 12 Diet Cokes a day on a regular day, which obviously has so much caffeine in. That's like buckets of coffee that he's ingesting, and so he's falling asleep, right? He's head's tipping back, his eyes are closing, his jaw is dropping. There was a very good courtroom sketch of him in that position that I saw. This is obviously something. Look, a lot of people fall asleep during long sequences. That's not the issue. The issue here is that if this guy truly is taking this seriously, he might want to try and stay awake. Let's take a little look at this clip regarding this. Maggie Haberman's been across this story, and let's see how she covered it.
Yeah, I have to ask, you guys have been, at the Times, have been live blogging this event, And 40 minutes ago, you wrote an observation that I was very surprised. Trump appears to be sleeping. His head keeps dropping down and his mouth goes slack. Tell us about that.
Well, Jake, he appeared to be asleep, and repeatedly his head would fall down. There have been other moments in other trials, like the Agent Carroll trial, which was around the corner in January, where he appeared very still and seemed as if he might be sleeping, but then he would move. This time, he didn't pay attention to a note that his lawyer, Todd Blanche, passed him. His jaw kept falling on his chest, and his mouth kept going slack. Now, sometimes people do fall asleep during court proceedings, but it's notable given the intensity of this morning and a lot of what was being argued.
Yeah, that's rather surprising.
Or not surprising, considering that, he's always seems to be jacked up on something.
This is a perfect example of a disconnect between the old guard media and the new media, which is the old guard, old style reporters think that this is dumb, that this is so trivial and stupid, just like they did with like the DeSantis wearing the high heels and all of this kind of stuff. They think it's beneath the conversation and is not appropriate to be talked about. But what we know, the new media, is how much things like this bother Donald Trump, bother his campaign team, and bother the MAGA activists and movement. Anything that shows him to be less than invincible it gets under their skin more than anything else and drives them crazy. Lincoln Project understands this, and that's why a lot of their ads are geared this way to get under his skin. But this is more significant than that. So this is the media following social media, because we and other groups blasted this out. It went hugely viral. Everybody got very into it. The Trump was denying it. The campaign team is denying it. They're justifying it in different ways. And, then the media follows, begrudgingly says, all right, maybe this is actually a story. They need to realize that these kind of things matter to voters. Why do they matter? Because for 4 years, Trump has been calling Joe Biden Sleepy Joe.
Right.
And the whole premise of his campaign is Joe is too old and he falls asleep and he's an old guy. And here we have Donald Trump falling asleep repeatedly, twice on the first day, twice on the second day, at least in court. And it goes to show you that, look, this is an old guy too. They're both old guys.
I mean, I'm not yet 50, and I like a little nap in the day. I'm sure you find time for one as well, Ron. Let's talk about what Trump has been asking the judge for, these requests for leave. I want to go do this. I need to go do that. And then, of course, there's this issue with his son Barron's graduation that, I mean, last week we were looking at pictures where he didn't even look like he knew who Barron was. I mean, this is the issue, isn't it? That it suits him to have a son in this moment.
Yeah, he's just trying every trick in the book, as usual, as what Trump does, to get out of things and to test. He's testing the judge here, okay, to see what he can get away with. And so what did they bring up? They brought up Passover. Right. You could see them, with their calendars out, looking at like,
all the religious festivals.
Holidays or what events. It's National Shrimp Scampi Day actually on Monday.
Yeah.
Monday
he was asking for Eid last week.
I love shrimp. I need that day off, right?
Yeah.
This is what they're doing. So they come up and they say, well, we can't have this during Passover, which is about to start. So, and what is the excuse they come up with? Well, Orthodox Jews won't want to sit on the jury if it's during Passover, and Orthodox Jews tend to be more conservative and might lean Trump. So this is so the judge says, okay, we're going to give the first 2 days of Passover off in the last 2 days. I'm not Jewish, but apparently those are like the most significant days. But we're not going to have like 10 days off, or whatever it is, of this trial for Passover. So you accommodate him, you give him every Wednesday off. You're taking all these different accommodations for Trump. He then asks, I want to go watch the oral argument in the January 6th for the January 6th defendants. I want to watch the case in front of the Supreme Court. No, you're not going to do that. I want to go to Barron's graduation, which is over a month away. And so here was the big firestorm on right-wing media, which is the judge said, look, that graduation is over a month away. You've already asked for 1 million other days off, and I've given you 1 million other days off. We'll see how the trial goes. We'll see if we're on schedule. We'll see if you're behaving yourself. And then I will decide at that time if you can have that day off. What he's telling him is, dude, knock off the BS, behave yourself, and I'll probably let you have that day off, even though I would probably never do that for anybody else. So what does Trump do? Leaves the court and lies and says, he said I can't go to my son's graduation. All over Fox News, all over Newsmax, all over social media, every right-winger in the universe is lying, saying that that's what Trump said. I mean, that's what the judge said. That is not what the judge said. It's a complete lie. So once again, this is the Trump playbook. You repeat the lie over and over again until it becomes true. And shame on Fox and Newsmax, who know better. They know this is a lie, but they push it for him.
Here's Alina Harbour doing the same thing on Fox.
Not even allowing a father, never mind a former president, but a father attend his son's graduation. And let's not forget Passover. Okay? Observant Jews have a right to go and pray to who they want and observe Passover. And this judge would not allow it, not for any of the attorneys. And there are observant Jewish attorneys on the Trump team and as well on the DA team. It's just a sad state of affairs for the American people. I can assure you of that.
So performative, so fake. But as you say, this rewriting of the narrative, there's no cameras or audio recording in court, so people are relying on reporters. The Trump people like to get there first, and then they rewrite the narrative of what went on in there before the reporters get to publish.
Yeah, let me tell you something about this too, because we were doing some digging to see if Trump actually attended the high school graduations of any of his other kids. Right,
so a good move.
I spent so many hours looking at yearbooks and stuff from the 80s and the 90s, from when Eric and Junior and Tiffany and Ivanka were in school. And, it was tough to find anything about that. I think we confirmed that he did go to Tiffany's graduation, but not necessarily the other three. But in doing that process, I read a lot of these very old articles from the 90s about Donald Trump's relationship with Junior and Eric back in the day, because he sent them off to a boarding school in rural Pennsylvania. He never visited them once during the whole 4 years that they were two of them were there for 4 years. He went one day, and it was a career day when he rolled in. They said it was it was a disastrous speech. He talked about himself. Everybody hated him, and he left. And I read a bunch of interviews that Don Jr. gave about his dad back then, and they were nothing like the way he talks about his dad now. He hated his dad. He loathed his dad. He did not speak to his dad for over a year when he was in high school. He didn't even have a word with him. And in those interviews, he said he was very critical. He said, look, my dad had nothing to do with us growing up. He didn't do anything with us. He didn't hang out with us. He didn't talk to us. He completely ignored us. So he doesn't say that now, of course, but this is what he was saying back then about his dad. So the idea that Trump is heartbroken over not being able to attend Barron's graduation is just preposterous.
And now Trump's kids are all seeking daddy's approval and not being able to get it in the same way that Donald Trump himself tried to get Fred Trump's approval and didn't get it. And
here's the other thing. Try and find, and I follow Trump more than anyone in the world, is try to find a video or a photo of Trump doing anything with Barron. You cannot find one. Okay. You can't. The only interaction that Trump has with Barron is when they walk in to Mar-a-Lago to a formal event, where Melania brings Barron.
Right.
And that has happened maybe 3 or 4 times in the last 3 years. And there's no interaction or conversation between Trump and Barron. They walk in together, but they don't interact with each other. You can't find any photo or video of Trump throwing a football, playing a board game, playing a card game, playing golf. Nothing with Barron. Zero. So, again, he's like the victim here, that he can't break himself away to go to the graduation. He has nothing to do with Barron's life.
Well, he has no paternal instinct. And as we know through generational trauma, if his father had no paternal instinct,
that's
maybe
right,
because he was too busy with the KKK or trying to prevent black people from renting apartments, then, is it any wonder? I just want to ask you a final question on the case, because I've been thinking about what Trump supporters and Republican voters, MAGA Republicans, what do they think this case is about? Do they even know what it's about? I just want to play this quick clip of this Trump supporter outside, and then we can react to it.
The man is a germaphobe. You know where I'm going with this. If he had an affair, okay, services were paid for, services rendered, services paid for, right? So what are we talking about? Lots of men use prostitutes.
I mean, that's a very interesting perspective. And I would say, and this is a point that I've been thinking about a lot and I've made videos about, and that is that Stormy Daniels, who she's referring to there, is a porn actress, but she's not a prostitute. She's not a sex worker. She works in a controlled, environment with other porn stars, and they all get tested, and that's part of the reason why they feel comfortable doing it in that situation. And if you watch the Stormy Daniels documentary, which I have recommended previously, it's out on Peacock at the moment, ironically, she actually describes the only one time that they had an intimacy, and she basically says in no uncertain terms that she didn't want to have sex with him, and she found him physically disgusting, but, he came out in a robe and his underpants and basically just climbed on her. And that was it. So, from that perspective, I mean, this trial does seem to, we're talking about it, people refer to a hush money trial. That's not what this is it?
No. What MAGA thinks that this trial is about is whether Donald Trump had sex with Stormy Daniels and whether he paid her.
Yeah.
That's what they think this is about. But when I listened to the lawyers kind of preview for the judge some of the evidence that they intend to introduce, because they were arguing over whether some of it was going to be allowed by the judge and some of it was not allowed by the judge, by the way. But some of it was. I was able to hear snippets of that and see snippets of that and go, ooh, this trial is going to be a lot more interesting than we thought. And it really is an election interference trial, because you have to go, we have such a short memory. You have to go back to 2016 and realize the situation. The Access Hollywood tape had come out, a month or so before the election. Yeah. That was a huge firestorm. And then Stormy Daniels was about to go public 2 weeks before the election, after the Access Hollywood. So now the American public would have heard, not only does he go up and grab and sexually assault women and brag about it, but he also had an affair or an interaction with a porn star right after Melania gave birth. Then what you're also going to find out in this trial, because Karen McDougal is going to testify, who is a Playboy model, who is going to say that she had a 1-year-long affair with Donald Trump all throughout Melania's pregnancy. So when you bring out the fact that they suppressed her and made her go away, and Stormy, you see how they interfered with the election. But here's the other part, is that how the money was paid was illegal. And that's really what the criminal charges are all about, was that Michael Cohen pays her off over $100,000, $130,000, something like that. And then Donald Trump is reimbursing him in installments and calling it legal fees to get around the campaign finance laws. So that's what makes it a crime. But I think to me, like the Karen McDougal testimony is going to be devastating. This is what he's most afraid of, because Melania is down there taking all of this in, reading about this stuff. and she's going to be soaking some of this in. This is going to cause him a lot of problems. And I can tell you that when we get into the testimony of that part of it, we're going to be blowing it up. I think the media is going to be blowing that part of it up, and it's going to hurt Donald Trump with the public.
Undoubtedly. Let's move on quickly and talk about the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who is facing a revolt of sorts. What is this situation now? It's gone beyond Marjorie Taylor Greene. She kind of started this. Now we've got Massey joining Marge. Just tell us the backstory.
Well, the big question that we talked about a couple weeks ago during the Easter break, when they took 2 weeks, she files the motion, but doesn't call it for a vote. They take 2 weeks off for Easter. She's doing her media tour. And what we talked about then was, is any Republican going to join her? Because up to that point, although many Republicans said they had a problem with Mike Johnson, they said that they weren't ready to join her on this. But many of them said, if he double crosses us on Ukraine and he brings Ukraine aid for a vote and it passes, that could change their mind. Okay. And so what happens? They come back. He makes a deal to, instead of doing what the Senate wanted, which was to put the whole foreign aid package for Taiwan, Israel, and
Ukraine,
one package for an up or down vote, his compromise is he's going to split it into 3 pieces and let them vote separately on each one. Well, that doesn't really solve the problem for the right wingers, because they know that it's all 3 are going to pass. Regardless of how he does it, if they're brought up for a vote, they're all going to pass. Ukraine might get the fewest votes, but it's still going to pass because there's enough Republicans who support it. And so Marge knows this, and several of the other right wingers know that too. So this is all blown up. Massey coming in and dropping that bomb in the conference meeting yesterday morning came out of nowhere, that he was going to join Marjorie's motion to vacate. That is massive. And then Ukraine aid is probably going to pass. I think it's going to pass tomorrow or the day after. And I think that Mike Johnson is in very deep trouble. And I can tell you this, I was thinking about this today. Mike Johnson, one big problem that he has is this. He is a horrible strategist. He does not have a strategic bone in his body. He's the kind of guy, like, if you play Monopoly, he's the first guy out. In chess,
he's the first henchman to die in the movie.
McCarthy he used strategic. He knew how to play the levers of power and to rig the game and this and that. And of course, Pelosi is a master, but this guy has no acumen for strategy.
I was thinking about him this morning, and I was thinking, like, this is the best job he's ever going to get, right? There's no other job that is going to be like, where he'll be more famous, where he'll be well remunerated, where people will be looking up to him. And he is second in line to the presidency, and we should remind people of that. If Biden falls, it's Kamala Harris, and after that, it would be Mike Johnson, which is a terrifying thought. But this is the reason why I think he's going to hang on for dear life, because this is the best job he's ever going to get. Let's take a look at Massey making this point.
There's only one person right now who can stop us from going into what happened last fall, and that's Mike Johnson. He's cleaning the barn, that's obvious.
So you want him to resign? You want him to resign?
Yes. Yeah, I asked him to resign.
What did he say?
He said he would not. And then I said, well, you're the one who's going to put us into this. Because the motion is going to get called, okay? Does anybody doubt that? The motion will get called, and then he's going to lose more votes than Kevin McCarthy. And I have told him this in private, like weeks ago.
I mean, Kevin McCarthy's downfall was not pretty. It wasn't pretty when he was trying to get elected in the first place 15 rounds later. What is it about Republicans not being able to secure a speaker? I mean, the problem they have with this guy is that he's not MAGA enough for them. He's not extreme enough. And despite being a far-right Christian nationalist who tries to pray away the gay and all this stuff, I mean, how can Mike Johnson not be MAGA enough for this former Freedom Caucus?
Well, a strange thing happened to Mike Johnson, in that he came to the realization a few weeks ago that he's got to get things done or they're going to lose their majority. You know,
Right.
I think, and he said that a number of times over the break in interviews, that he realizes, like, we can't shut the government down. We got to pass these things. And he's got enough members that have been pushing him on Ukraine and Israel aid, that, you know, that are moderate people that want these things brought to the floor for a vote. So he understands that if these things don't happen, that he's going to be out as speaker because he's going to be in the minority. They don't understand that. That's the problem. People like Green, they believe that the mistake is being moderate, that if they go hard right, that the country will be with them. And the country, they mistakenly and delusionally believe that the majority of the country agrees with them. If we ask Marjorie Taylor Greene, for real, like, how much of the country do you think agrees with you? She will tell you like 65, 70%, when it's really like 20%.
But this is why they're going to lose the election, isn't it? I mean, this is what is so crazy. And, you know, I'm in my mind, and a lot of the work that I'm doing at the moment, including my interview on Sunday with Noah Bookbinder, who deals with ethics in Washington, was, you know, there's going to be another insurrection if Trump loses and claims that it was fraud, and then there'll be a whole, January 6th was just the rehearsal compared to what could be coming. Are you telling me that there is that much denial in the minds of people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and a lot of the GOP, senior GOP, that they genuinely think that these far-right extreme views are the views of America as a whole?
Yes, because they all have these certain characteristics in common, which is they're from districts that are overwhelmingly white, overwhelmingly Republican. They don't ever really, so they've grown up in these districts and they went to school there, and
so they're
they
institutionalized.
And they don't travel. It's another common theme. If you look at these Freedom Caucus members, they either don't travel at all, or when they do travel, they stay in tourist bubbles. They go to like sandals resorts, or they go on like cruises or tours. And I'm not saying that. I know you like cruises. I'm not.
I like a cruise, but I'm not taking it.
It's a contained. You're not experiencing culture.
Yeah, you're not seeing real life. Yeah.
Like like Marjorie Taylor Greene has never been in like a small town in Argentina, and so they lack the basic understanding of what the average person thinks in other places around the country. A lot of these people have never been in big cities before, except for like the airport or a restaurant. So they're from small towns. Like, you take a look at James Comer, Marjorie. These people are from small towns, rural towns, and they just don't understand that there's a whole big wide world with a lot of people out there who don't agree with them.
And that's why America, under these people, and certainly under Trump's presidency, really was very much the laughingstock of the rest of the world. Because, do you remember that speech that he made at the UN where he tried to big himself up and everyone just started laughing at him?
Yeah.
And he was like, I wasn't expecting that, but I'll take it. I mean, yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? How if you live such a segregated and secluded life, and you are institutionalized in your bubble, political bubble, social bubble, and racial bubble, and, all of these things, is that it doesn't make for a particularly forward-thinking individual, and it's a shame, because this is what makes us who we are. This is the multicolors of the world. Listen, we have to take a quick break, but we're going to come back, and I want to talk more about Trump's stock. Of course, this is Donald Trump's Truth Social stock, which is continuing to tank, and how that in itself could be a problem for him as a future president. That's next here on Uncovered. Do you remember cereal being one of the best parts of being a kid? Well, as I got older, I had to watch for sugar and empty carbs. Well, Magic Spoon has the amazing flavors you love, but high protein and less sugar. You can get the variety pack, 4 flavors: cocoa, fruity, frosted, and peanut butter. This pack has no grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and 4 to 5 grams of net carbs, and only 140 calories per serving. It's high protein, has no grams of sugar, keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, and soy-free. Go to magicspoon.com/uncovered to grab a variety pack and try it today. And be sure to use the promo code UNCOVERED at checkout to save $5 off your order. And Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So, if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember, start your day off right with a delicious bowl of high-protein cereal at magicspoon.com/uncovered and use code UNCOVERED to save $5 off. Thank you, Magic Spoon, for sponsoring this episode. Have you ever wished you had a whiter and brighter smile? Well, before you visit a dentist, you should know that whitening treatments there can be expensive, and it's not just the price. You also have to book the appointment and schedule time away from work or family to sit in a dentist's office and undergo the procedure. It's a hassle. Fortunately, now you can try Smile Actives at home or anywhere, anytime. Smile Actives offers a safe and affordable alternative to those expensive whitening procedures. 97% of Smile Actives users in a clinical trial reported up to 6 shades whiter on average, all within 30 days. Simply add Smile Active's Pro Whitening Gel to your regular toothpaste. It's been formulated with polyclean technology to boost stain removal and deliver active whitening ingredients into teeth's grooves and crannies to get better whitening. Smile Actives makes a teeth whitening gel that can simply be added to your toothbrush every time you brush your teeth. No change in your routine, no extra time, no more messy strips, trays, or lights. People will start commenting on your whiter, brighter smile in just days. Visit smileactives.com/uncovered today to receive a special buy one get one free offer with auto delivery plus free shipping and handling. That's smileactives.com/uncovered. Terms and conditions apply. See site for details. And descriptions and links to our advertisers and sponsors can be found down in the description below. I'm Anthony Davis. He's Ron Filipkowski. We should, Ron, just mention the breaking news that both articles of impeachment against DHS Secretary Mayorkas have now officially failed in the U.S. Senate. This effectively means the proceedings are over.
Yeah. Think of all the time, money that was wasted on that, ridiculous show. There was no crime. I mean, it was just it's a policy disagreement. Look, I have my issues with Mayorkas. I've expressed them on this show. I don't agree with a lot of what he's done. I agree with some, but I don't agree with all. But you don't impeach anyone for a policy decision. You impeach them for a high crime and a misdemeanor, a crime, committing a crime. And Mayorkas didn't commit any crime. So this whole thing was ridiculous.
Let's move into Trump's Truth Social stock, which has been, a huge bone of contention since it went public last week. The stock price started somewhere up here. It was obviously falsely inflated, as we know. A lot of people now are starting to write about it, and journalists talking about it like it's a scam, like the whole idea of launching this stock as a scam, people buying in and it being inflated. And now it's, 15% down today or this week? I mean, this is a problem, isn't it, for a future presidential candidate or a presidential candidate, future president, potentially going into the White House with a publicly trading company that people could buy shares of. Foreign, countries could try and get into the good books of a President Trump with a desperate ego. I mean, it's from a national security perspective, it's not a good idea to have a guy in charge with a publicly trading company like this, is it?
Yeah. We don't know right now who's buying these shares. I mean, is the Russians, is it the Saudis, is it foreign governments? We have no idea. And so I think what most of the reporting, and I don't pretend to know a lot about the stock market, so I've spent a lot of time reading people who are experts about this. And what they seem to believe is that the initial bubble that went up, the spike that went up, was a lot of MAGA people. It was a lot of Trump fans that were buying in, smaller investors, but a lot of them that wanted a piece of Trump. They wanted a piece of the action. But, the smart people, if were shorting the stock, et cetera, et cetera. But what really caused it to tank in the last week was Trump's latest filing, which shows that he intends to dilute the shares quite substantially and make them worth a lot less. And so the stock market reacted to that this week, and it really took a nosedive. It's down about 2/3 from its high. So it's lost about 60 to 70% of its value from just a few weeks ago, and heading down. So by the time we talk about this, by the time he's able to sell his shares, they may be worth next to nothing. And so the problem is there's no product, there's no value. You know who really killed Truth Social is Elon Musk, really, because Truth Social could have succeeded if all the right-winger MAGA people and influencers who were kicked off Twitter and banned for life, your Laura Loomers, your Alex Joneses, all of these people.
Yeah, if they'd have migrated, right?
If they'd have migrated over there, that was the concept. And the concept was to get Republican members of Congress and Fox News hosts and Newsmax hosts over there. But what happened? Elon Musk buys Twitter when this is supposed to start happening and reinstates all those people and welcomes them back. So what are you going to do? You're going to go back on Twitter where you already got 500,000 followers,
right? Yeah.
Or you're going to start over from scratch on this new platform. They didn't go on Truth Social, if they did, they just opened up an account and they don't really post over there. So, and then the second thing that happened is hardly any members of Congress or senators or Fox hosts or anything went on Truth Social either. So really, the only thing you have is Donald Trump over there posting and a bunch of QAnon nuts.
Yeah,
and that's about it.
It's like a kind of press release ticker for him, isn't it? He's posting hundreds of things each day at all hours of the day and the night, and there doesn't seem to be much room for anybody else. It's just like his ticker tape. But there could be a man to the rescue, because Devin Nunes announced big news to turn things around. Let's have a little listen to him.
It's big news, especially for Real America's Voice. As you probably know, you've participated as we've been testing this. And so this will be the first app. As you know, with Truth Social, we're the beachhead against big tech. We're trying to take the best of Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, TikTok, put it into one app. Well, we're now going to have the ability for canceled TV programs or maybe not canceled, but maybe not allowed on all the platforms. You'll be able to actually watch television within Truth Social. So that's what we've been doing.
All the racist shows that are your old favorites, they're all gonna come back. There's all gonna be all these words that are socially unacceptable now. They'll all be back in. There'll be old showings of Bonanza with all the bad bits back in. I mean, he's the CEO of Truth Social. I mean, he really is trying to save his own neck right now, isn't he?
Yeah, come to Truth Social. It's the only place you can hear like the N-word and racist jokes, and this is the other problem is Devin Nunes. I mean, how Trump came up with the idea to hire Devin Nunes to get him to leave Congress, and he got him to leave Congress. We paid him $1 million up front, so that's how he got him to leave Congress. And he's paying him quite a big salary, which is one reason why Truth Social is losing money is because you got people like him and Kash Patel and others on the payroll that are useless. And so, Nunes is a guy who was a dairy farmer. I'm going to say he's a dairy farmer because he sues people who say that he's not. And so I'm going to say this. Devin Nunes was his family owned dairy farms. Okay. His family did. So a lot of the controversy is, he promoted himself when he ran for Congress and when he was in Congress as a farmer, but most reports are he spent no time farming. He just grew up in this family of farmers that own dairy farms, but he wasn't actively involved in farming. But, I'm not going to say he didn't, because like I said, people who have said that he wasn't a farmer have been sued by Devin Nunes, who sues everyone. So you're talking about, though, a guy who's a dairy farmer and putting him in charge of a social media tech company. I mean, with no qualifications, no experience whatsoever. And this is what you get. These are his ideas. Let's go get, old Fat Albert episodes and put them on True Social.
I'm kind of interested to see how this plays out. My feeling is that Truth Social will, be no more. There'll come a point where they'll just have to shut it down, simply because, as aside from the share price as a public company, the actual business itself is not doing anything in terms of advertising and revenue. I mean, what was it, like, worth 138 million or something?
It depends if Trump wins the presidency.
Right.
If Trump wins the presidency, it will, and I think a lot of the people that are investing in it, that's what they're betting on.
Yeah.
Then I think it will probably do reasonably well. Okay. But if he loses the presidency, goes to prison, then it's done. It's all over.
Let's talk about your favorite, Ted Cruz. He's back in the headlines again for shamelessly issuing a statement when this is about the Chips and Science Act, isn't it? It's like typical with a lot of these Republican senators and Congress people. They vote against stuff, and then when it passes, then they try to take the credit for it. Just to explain what went on, I'll show his statement here. And in fact, let me just read it. He wrote, today's announcement confirms Texas remains the single best location for companies to grow and thrive. But to fully accomplish the national security goals of the CHIPS Act and reduce America's dependence on foreign semiconductors, the House must pass my bipartisan permitting reform legislation and get the bill to the president's desk. Well, he wrote, get to the bill to the president's desk. So just make that clear. That was his mistake and not mine. Tell us what the story is here, Ron.
Well, this is the familiar pattern that these guys all do. First of all, let's just talk about this. These are all Biden initiatives. Most of these things are, whether it's the infrastructure bill, the Chips and Science Act, they're all Biden administration initiatives. And they spread that money all over the country equally. This money is not being favored towards Democratic states or Democratic districts. The money is being spread around fairly and equally, which should have been the reason why Republicans should have gotten behind these things. And Republicans did all put their earmarks in, their requests for certain things in their districts, as and they put those things forward. And this is how they try and claim credit. They say, well, I'm the one who proposed this, and it got into the bill. So even though I ended up voting against the bill, I still should get credit because I'm the one who put this original thing forward. Now,
sneaky.
Texas is the largest beneficiary of the Chips and Science Act. They're getting $61 billion and 8,000 high-paying jobs created in Texas. And yet Ted Cruz voted against it. And so because the argument, why did they vote against it? Because they're all obsessed with the scores that they get from rating agencies like CPAC, like all these different, they like to brag. And you see, I have a 95% conservative score from CPAC, because if you vote for something like this, you get downgraded on your score. So this is what they do. They get these projects in there, then they vote against the bill so they can get a high conservative score on the ratings. And then they take credit for it by saying, well, I'm the one who first came up with the idea for this project. But then Ted takes it even one step further in that statement where he says, okay, well, look, I voted against this project. He doesn't admit that, but what he says is, but these plants that are being built still need permitting. And I have proposed legislation to speed up the permitting process to get these factories open sooner. And so he's looking for credit on that on the back end, he accelerated the permitting to get these projects going quicker. So he deserves all the credit. It's totally shameless, typical Ted Cruz.
Talking of typical Ted Cruz, there's a controversy down at the southern border, of course, Texas being a border town, border state, I should say, with these flyers that have been distributed at an NGO in Mexico encouraging or claiming to encourage migrants to vote for President Biden. Just explain to us what this story is, because this is more MAGA propaganda that is not just in the ether. This is actually taking physical form, isn't it?
So much border disinformation out there for the last couple of years. I've talked about it, that this has been a hugely frustrating topic for me. in terms of trying to fight this stuff, because there's almost nobody out there who is countering any of this stuff as far as media. Like, there's nobody fact checking any of this stuff. There's really nobody from the Biden campaign pushing back on a lot of this border disinformation. So it's like me and a handful of other people, a small handful on the left, who debunk these things. And by the time we debunk them, it's too late. You know, it's already been out there for 3 or 4 days. And this is yet another example. You know, this group puts out that supposedly there's an NGO connected to the Biden administration that is down in Mexico passing out these flyers, instructing people how to vote illegally when they get into the United States. That's what this is all about. This is how you register to vote. And this is part of the Republican theme, that the Biden administration is allowing all these migrants in because they want them to vote illegally in the 2024 election. And this is how Biden and the Democrats are going to steal the election. This is what they say. So this flyer plays into that narrative that the Biden administration is using NGOs to try and rig the election. Turns out the whole story is false. This never happened. These flyers were completely fabricated. It's all untrue. But that post that you just put up got 7 million views and counting before the first one of us 3 days later figured out that this is a lie.
For our audio listeners, the post that I put up was supposedly a copy of the flyer that said in it, reminder to vote for President Biden when you are in the United States. We need another 4 years of his term to stay open. I mean, this is, as wrong and awful as this is, it's pretty clever, isn't it, in terms of propaganda?
Yeah, because you're convincing the American people that the Democrats are trying to rig the election, that they're trying to rig it with non-Americans. Elon Musk is out there on the front lines pushing this narrative as well, you know, that this is the Democrats' plan. He said that, and he said that repeatedly. And so you're trying to fool the American people into thinking that Democrats are trying to scam the election. And they did the same thing in 2020. They didn't use migrants, but they used, you know, COVID policy and things and mail-in ballots and stuff like that. So it's disgusting. It's deceptive. It's horrible. These people aren't coming here to vote for Biden. They're coming here for food, for jobs, to raise their families. They're not really concerned about our election. So yes, it's deceptive. It's disgusting. I wish there was like a full-time team that did nothing but debunk migrant conspiracies, because that's really what's needed, is like 3 people full-time to do nothing but that. But, you know, they got to allocate resources how they see fit. So.
Well, as an immigrant myself, I'll just confirm that we cannot vote in elections. We need citizenship. It takes almost a decade to even be able to apply for citizenship of living full-time in the U.S. So yeah, I won't get to vote in this November election or for the foreseeable future. Let's talk about Kyle Rittenhouse now. He's continuing his college tour as a public speaker. Not sure what it is that he has to say, but there's been some major protests this time. This one was at Kent State University in Ohio. Let's take a look. should remind people that Kyle Rittenhouse was the young vigilante who drove across state lines with one of these rifles and shot and killed 2 people at a BLM protest, and then went to court and got off somehow on a self-defense charge. Explain who these, not just the protesters, but who were they protesting against? Were those people that actually went to see the talk?
Yeah, and as you can see from the people that are leaving, who are the ones that were in there, they are not, for the most part, college students at Kent State. They are people from the community that live in the area that have attended this event. Most of them are adults, as you can see, or they're younger people who are not students. The people protesting are the ones who are students, which is the exact opposite of the point of this tour,
the college tour
he's on. Right. Yeah. The point, and this shows the stupidity of Charlie Kirk, who is the sponsor of this. Charlie Kirk's job is voter outreach for the Republican Party on college campuses. That's what he's paid to do. He's supposed to be going into colleges and persuading students to vote Republican. So how is he doing that? By sending in Kyle Rittenhouse, whose results in the opposite, a firestorm of hatred against. This is your ambassador. This is the Republican Party ambassador. Like you said, what has Kyle Rittenhouse done in his life? What has he accomplished? He has never gone to college. He tried to get in the military and scored so low on the test that he couldn't even get the Marine Corps to take him. Okay. He's never had a real job. His job is just a grifter. His job is to tell the story of how he killed 2 people and why, and what happened to him in his trial. And that's it. So how long is he going to try and make a career out of killing 2 people and the aftermath of that? So that's one part of it, is like, this guy needs to get a job. This guy needs to go to school, do something productive with his life, instead of continuously trying to grift off this. How long is this going to last? And then the second part is, how in the world is the Republican Party thinking that this is helping them somehow?
He'd be better off just getting a job as a security guard outside of 7-Eleven. I would also say that those protesters who had a lot of fight in them, then people are not stupid. And then this is something I'm thinking about for the election in November. That fight that you see there, people recognizing, coming together and recognizing that Kyle Rittenhouse is not somebody to be celebrated, and actually stepping out and protesting and making noise about it in a peaceful fashion. They're the people that will be voting against Donald Trump in November.
That's right. It's if we can get the young people out to turn out in big numbers, as the abortion amendments and things like that, legalization of marijuana should also help do, and Donald Trump's unpopularity should help do, then look, that's gonna make a huge difference in this election, because young people don't vote in this country. Yeah. So if we're able to get them to actually turn out in significant numbers for the first time, that would be huge. And so if I was running the RNC, I would be on the phone with Charlie Kirk saying, can you please send somebody else into college campuses instead of Kyle
but Laura
Rittenhouse?
Trump is running the RNC, and she probably is loving this. And that, again, is part of the problem, isn't it? That for them is that it's the same mentality you were describing with Marjorie Taylor Greene, just assuming that everybody is a far-right Christian nationalist. That is not the makeup of the United States. The majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to choose. And so many issues that the Republicans are on the other side of. Talking of which, let's go to Tennessee now from Ohio, and this fascinating story about a bill to allow first cousins to marry. Just explain this to me before I show the clip.
There's a lot of crazy state legislatures in this country, and there's always a competition. And I had a running debate on my Twitter page, like, who's the craziest? Is Florida the worst? Is Arizona's bad? Pennsylvania was bad. There were some different states that were pretty bad, pretty crazy. But I think the consensus has now been reached that Tennessee is consistently the most insane state legislature in the country. So, you have this rather colorful Republican legislator. So it's been Tennessee law forever, for probably 200 years, as long as it's been a state, that first cousins can marry. There's actually a law that permits that. Most states do not allow first cousins to marry in the United States. So you have to be second cousin or more. And so a Democrat proposed a bill to do away with this and to say first cousins should not be able to marry. And it was supposed to be pretty non-controversial, where most just about everybody in both parties was going to agree, look, this law has been on the books for over 100 years. It's time to fix the law. But this one Republican legislator stood up and said, well, listen, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this law, because my grandparents are first cousins. And so he opposed the law, and it just sort of, everybody was just sort of shocked. And the Republican leader of the committee was just like, I don't really know what to say right now, but I'm just not going to comment. So
let's take a look at it.
So there's an additional risk, but it's not as significant as some might otherwise be led to believe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move to table this amendment that would allow first cousins to marry.
And the fact of the matter is that unless anyone in this body can articulate a compelling interest to deny a male first cousin from marrying a male first cousin, this bill demonstrably violates Obergefell, and we should vote it down.
Representative Jernigan.
Well, I can say this. It's outlawed already. It's criminal in Texas. It's already outlawed in the states, and those have not been struck down by the courts. So apparently there is some kind of interest somewhere. I renew my motion.
Representative Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move previous question.
Previous question been called. Is there objection? Seeing none, we're voting. We're all on board. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1917 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 75, 2 nays, non-present, not voted.
Senate Bill 1917, having received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion reads here is tabled.
So weird.
So you see there, he got 2 votes, himself and one other. So pretty funny that, standing up for the interesting part about that is the argument that he made was Obergefell, which is the Supreme Court case that said you can't prohibit gay people from getting married under the Constitution. And he brought that up, as his argument. And that's funny because this guy introduced a bill a month ago to ban pride flags, in schools and public buildings, that no one can have a pride flag. So he's very anti-gay rights, this guy. And so when he wants first cousins to be able to marry, he's citing gay rights, because this is saying that 2 gay first cousins can't marry, and that's not right. So he's actually trying to use a Supreme Court decision that he disagrees with to back up first cousins being able to marry.
Let's talk about Sarah Huckabee Sanders, talking of first cousins marrying. The lectern gate has now got to a point where she's had to make a public statement. This is after state investigators have referred their findings to a criminal prosecutor. This all goes back to a lectern that was supposedly purchased, what was it, $19,000 or something, for this fancy lectern for state events, or for, as a podium platform for her to use. I can't remember her actually even using it. I mean, I think it...
No, she never did.
Never used it.
It's a crazy, convoluted story. I'll just do my best to kind of summarize it.
Okay.
What the issue is because here's what happened. It all started with her going to Paris, France, on a junket when she was first elected.
Yeah.
One of her first things was, I'm going to Paris with all my family, my staff, and all this. Okay, on taxpayer dime. Okay, how? Because she's going to France to try and get French companies to do business in Arkansas. That was the stated purpose of the trip. Okay, fine. A lot of state legislators use this scam to get taxpayers to pay for their vacations. So she goes there, and somebody did a Freedom of Information request, an Arkansas person, to try and dig into finding out like how much money was being spent over there. And in the process of doing that, uncovered this invoice for $19,000 for a lectern. And he thought, well, that seems like an awful lot. And by the way, where's the lectern? No one knows where the lectern is. So he starts asking questions. People start asking questions. And next thing you know, when they're trying to change the public records laws in Arkansas to cover this up. So next thing you know, the head of the Republican Party steps forward and says, look, let's just squash all this. I'll pay for the lectern. And he writes a check to the governor's office to reimburse the governor's office for the $19,000 for the lectern, which, by the way, had still never been delivered. Okay, there's still no lectern. The issue is the question, and here's the other part. The money did not go to like a local Arkansas company. It went to a company in Virginia that was connected to one of her friends and political donors named Virginia Beckett, who also, by the way, just happened to be in Paris, France at the same time as Huckabee's trip. So there's a lot of shenanigans happening here. So the question is, like, was she kicking back 19 grand to her friend who might have been paying for part of the Paris trip or behind the Paris? This is what we don't know. And so what it was referred to a prosecutor for is a lot of technical things, which is the fact that invoices were shredded, multiple invoices were duplicated, all of this kind of stuff. So most of the criminal referral aspect of it is technical in nature. The real story is, why did 19 grand go to her friend in Virginia for a lectern that was never delivered? And why did her friend just happen to be in Paris at the same time?
Let's take a look at her thoughts on the podium.
Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Cruz.
I mean, in all seriousness, why did she post that?
I mean, that the investigative report comes out, it gets referred to a prosecutor 2 days ago. That's her response.
Not taking it seriously.
This is a big joke. It's a
trying
big
to
game.
divert attention. Yeah. It's never ending with this lot, is it? Okay, finally, just before we finish, we have a message from Stephen Miller, I think. This is something that I saw you post, and I was like, wow, this is quite the thing. Now, Stephen, let's just explain who he is, because we often talk about this guy. We don't really get to see or hear much of him, apart from on those ads that might come up on your thread where he's trying to sell his legal services now. Just explain what his role is in the Trump administration, or the shadow administration.
Well, he's definitely an architect of a lot of domestic policy initiatives of Trump. I mean, when Trump talks domestic policy, a lot of that is coming from Stephen Miller. And he's also a speechwriter. He writes a lot of his stump speech material. So Stephen Miller is just one of these guys who's a very influential person in Trump world, who would never in a million years get that close to the presidency. Or
it's like Mike Johnson, right?
That high up. Right. It's just like Mike Johnson.
Yeah.
In a different world without Donald Trump, none of these people would ever rise to that height, based on their talent, ability, background, and experience. And so he's a Trump sycophant. He's a weird, strange dude. And the odd thing that he did last night was he was talking about Donald Trump as a fashion icon. This is the level of cultiness that we have here, and how he has inspired generations of American men to dress like him. And I'm listening to this and I'm going, this is the most preposterous thing, because Donald Trump wears exactly the same thing every single day for years. He has two outfits. He's got his blue suit with the white shirt and a red tie, and he's got his white golf shirt outfit. He wears the same thing every day. You don't see people walking around dressing like that in everyday life, So what is he talking about?
Also, Donald Trump's clothes never fit. That's the thing that kind of gets me. It's like, what, I'm sure he wears a brand new shirt every day because the shirt always looks pretty crisp. But the suit is so oversized. It's got those kind of 80s shoulder pads. It's got the pleats in the trouser with the flappy leg and the little turn up. I mean, it's man from the 80s. It's like he's just walked straight out of the movie Mannequin. Yep. So I recognize that there is something in Donald Trump. There is a theory that people tend to stay dressed in the year that they felt most successful. The year where they really felt like they were the Don, if you'd pardon the expression, that's where they would like to remain. And so, maybe in the 80s, things were flying high for him. He was in the newspapers for all the wrong reasons. And maybe he tries to kind of maintain that, aside from the bird's nest on his head. Anyway, let's take a look at the sycophant Stephen Miller. Not an ounce or shred of irony in this interview. Here it is.
Also to say, since we're addressing the subject of style, the most stylish president and first lady in our lifetimes are Donald Trump and Melania Trump. Donald Trump's a style icon. He changed American fashion in The Apprentice. People spent the next 10 years trying to dress like Donald Trump. So if anybody deserves a puff piece on their sense of style, it's Donald Trump and the First Lady.
I mean, that was a reaction. It said on the caption there that was a reaction to Biden looking stylish. So is that what they're trying to do here, just trying to diminish Joe Biden? I mean, aside from being arguably the most effectual president in American political history, he also has a little style. I like a little soft shoe with a suit. But what are they trying to rectify here?
Yeah, I think they're responding to an article that just came out. I don't know what publication it was about Biden's dress. And he always has been one of the most best dressed senators going all the way back. He's always immaculately dressed and very stylish. That's always been Joe Biden, and still is. So that it is responding. That bothers them. When you're trying to say Joe Biden is better at something than Trump, he's a better dresser. Obviously, that again, these are small things that get under their skin that bother them, because it goes to the heart of the facade, the veneer that Trump likes to present. So the other funny thing is for him to be talking about style. This is a guy, Stephen Miller, who the first couple of years of the Trump administration used to spray hair on his head.
That's
right.
He used
spray
he did
hair,
that kind of weird hairline spray.
That's right. Until he got ridiculed so bad he stopped doing it. But I mean, for him to be talking about fashion is pretty funny.
Maybe you and I should show up next Wednesday with a perfect hairline sprayed on, just to see how it plays. Okay, I'm game if you are. Ron, we have to finish, but always a pleasure. Nice to hang out with you this Wednesday. We'll be back next week at the same time. We'll do it all over again. If you want to download the audio podcast, you can do that tonight. It'll be available wherever you get yours. And if you'd like to watch this show again, you can rewind as soon as we've finished. Ron, have a great week.
Too.